Now I'm going to admit, when Spinnaker reached out to me and offered me this watch to feature on my channel, I went on their website and I had a look at it and I thought, that's interesting. It's definitely different. It's something that might cause a little bit of a stir for some people. I even thought perhaps that, well, it might just be something of a bit of a novelty, but I didn't think that I would particularly love it, or at least I didn't think I would particularly wear it. And what has come as a big surprise to me is not only do I really like this watch, it's actually turned out to be a watch that I'm wearing a lot. Hello, you're watching James. My name's James, you're watching me, and I am talking about watches, and it is not the first time that I've had this feeling about a watch. And it's one of the reasons why I then said yes to Spinnaker when they offered this one to me. But because they did, and because I then get to keep this one, well, you would have seen that sponsored icon, and of course I'm going to leave a link directly to their website. But because I've had this experience before when I've seen a watch on a website and I've thought, it's kind of cool, but not for me. But I've had those experiences and then handled those watches before and then come to really like them. And that's exactly what's happened with this one as well. And it's exactly why I have then this other feeling of it's a shame that these sorts of designs of watches from these sorts of brands aren't more readily available to us as watch enthusiasts to get hands-on with, because there's no way I would have ordered this one for myself. I perhaps would have looked at some pictures of it, I perhaps would have watched a review on it, and I would have thought, that's kind of interesting and kind of cool and a little bit of a novelty, but there's no way I would have purchased this one for myself. But I absolutely love this watch. It's really nice. And it's not a novelty. But why am I calling it a novelty? Why am I even saying this? Well, it's because, well, it's the crystal on this one that really made me think this, and I'm sure you watching this, looking at the vision of this crystal, are having similar thoughts, because you're thinking, what is that? Why is it so big? Is that just a strange design element that they've chosen to be that sort of novelty? I use that word a little bit because that's what's coming to mind when I initially saw this watch. But it's really weird that I wear this one and that crystal, that lens that is on top of this watch, isn't something that stands out as something that's weird or different. It just becomes part of it, part of the form of this watch, part of the reason why I like it so much. But let's go back to their website and just see the different variations of this one, because there are a couple of different colors to choose from. There is, of course, this green version that I chose, there's a gray version, a blue version, and even this red version, which looks quite interesting. But all of them cost $445 US. They're all powered by the Seiko NH35 automatic movement, 300 meters of water resistance, which is probably what I did expect, but they also give a nice solid 2-year warranty. And being from a brand like Spinnaker that is established, it is a company that you can rely upon if you ever had to utilize that warranty. Now, they have called this one the Challenger. It is the Spinnaker Challenger, but they've also referred to it as the Picard Junior. Now, if you are aware of the Spinnaker Picard, you'll note that it has some visual similarities to this Challenger watch, that big lens sitting on top. But the Picard, well, the Picard is a lot more expensive than this one, and it's a lot bigger than this one, and it really is sort of designed to be a deep, deep diver, whereas I think this Challenger is like a wearable version of it. Because when I saw that Picard released some time ago, I thought, wow, that's very interesting and very cool, and definitely a novelty too. But then when I looked at the price and the size, I thought, well, even if I wanted to own it, it's not for me. This does feel like a translation of that design back down to a much more wearable watch that can actually be in your collection and put on and enjoyed. So sorry to interrupt. I know it is sometimes annoying when people jump in the middle of videos and ask you to subscribe, but that's exactly what I'm doing. So please, if you haven't done so already, could you please subscribe to the channel? Okay, let's get back to the video. But let's have a look at that. Well, I'm not even going to call it a crystal. I'm going to call it a lens, because that's what it is. And it is bonkers. It really is bonkers. When you look at the photos of it, when you look at the video of it, it looks bonkers. What's interesting though, as I've already mentioned, is that bonkersness of that lens doesn't really translate when you actually wear it. It just is part of the watch. It doesn't make me look at this watch and think I'm wearing something strange or something bonkers. It's just part of the design. In fact, what it allows it to do is blend the case, the bezel, and that lens all into one. But what it does do is it causes a lot of light play, it causes a lot of distortion, and it causes taking videos of it to be much more difficult. So I apologize for pretty much all my footage of this one. For you can see the camera, you can see the light, you can see me, and it's been challenging. It is called the Spinnaker Challenger, and maybe that's why they've chosen that. It's a challenge to film, so apologies for my camera work. I don't have the skills or knowledge or abilities to make it better than what it is. But when this one did arrive, I had, well, another slight surprise, because this one comes on a nice bracelet. It's really usable, it suits the watch, but it also comes with a rubber strap, a nicely coloured match to the dial rubber strap, to that bezel insert too. And I'm not a big rubber strap person. I don't tend to gravitate towards them, but with this one, I've been switching back and forth between the two regularly. And I don't normally do that. Normally with watches, I might use the original strap or bracelet, or I might switch out to something that I prefer. But once I sort of get into a position where I find that's the right one for the watch, I then rarely change them out. This watch, however, I've been swapping out regularly, and it's been easy to do that because they both have a quick release system in them. But this watch isn't just about that lens. I think we've seen it, we've talked about it, it is a lens. But look at the dial of this watch. It didn't need to be as detailed as that. I think the lens itself might have been enough to give an interesting look to this watch, but the distortion then adds to that textured green dial. They've also added in a crosshairs. They've also utilised a handset that I think looks brilliant. Just look at the tipped yellow section of that second hand. Just look at the rear of the minute hand. I've not seen that before. And those crosshairs draw your eyes into the center of this dial. It has a interesting and very cool textured dial, the fume effect to it as well. Those hour markers, those longer extended battens, as well as those round applied markers, certainly relate and fit in well with their choice of hands too. The date window fits in nicely at the 6. But the one thing I will mention, and it is only one of the things of this watch that I will mention that I wish was slightly changed, was the length of that second hand. It's a very cool second hand. I like the design, I like the color variations, I like the black and the yellow and then the lume on there as well, but it feels a little bit short. And I think perhaps it could have been longer. Perhaps maybe when you distort the watch by looking at this, it makes it feel longer, but it feels a little bit short. So I wish they put a slightly longer second hand on this one. But this watch, well, it is obviously a dive watch. It looks like a dive watch, it feels like a dive watch. It has water resistance like a dive watch, but it also has lume like a dive watch too, which is also slightly harder to capture on film, but the lume is good. Just trust me on that. And I do like how they then related that color dial to that color bezel insert. It then also works in with that rubber strap too when I'm wearing that. You've got a green dial, green bezel insert, green strap. It feels like it makes a cohesive design to this watch. And I like that. And I like that it is also sloping down slightly. And I like that it has a nice 120 click unidirectional feel to it. And it's easy to grab because of that coin edge bezel. But what surprises me further about this watch is the case. The case is a lot more slimmer and a lot more thinner than I would have expected. This is obviously a dive watch. I expect a dive sort of case, but this one is rather thin. And maybe they're trying to offset the height of that lens, but it's really nice. And it really works well with both that bezel and that lens. It curves down onto wrist slightly, but it has those nice elements of brushing and those two chamfers, both above and below the case, of polish. And that allows this watch to sit down onto wrist. And it also feels balanced on wrist when you have the bracelet on, but also feels firm on wrist when you have that rubber strap on. But let's talk about the bracelet, because this is something else that probably could be improved slightly. It is a perfectly usable and fine bracelet. It is all brushed, it has split pins, it has a solid milled clasp with 3 levels of micro adjust, but it feels slightly less refined than the case and the rest of the watch. It feels a little bit more off the shelf, which is not a bad thing, but it's certainly something that could be slightly better. It's probably one of the reasons why I'm also switching back and forth to that rubber strap, because that actually feels really nice on wrist. But you're probably wondering, Well, it does look tall on wrist. How big exactly is this watch? Because although it has that height from that crystal or that lens, it actually fits down onto my 17 centimeter wrist really well because it only has a case diameter of 42 millimeters. Yes, okay, with that lens it is 18.8 millimeters tall, but of course it doesn't really feel like that because the lens is most of that. The lug to lug is 49 millimeters. The lug width on the bracelet anyway, well, of course it's 20 millimeters, but on the bracelet it tapers down to 18, and it has a nice weight of 163 grams. So it's got some heft to it, but it's not over heavy. And as I mentioned, it does then feel nice and balanced on wrist. Spinnaker watches tend to be powered by certain movements, and this one is powered by one of their most used movements, the Seiko NH35, which I think is a great choice for watches in this sort of price category. It's reliable, you can sort of feel that it's going to be working, you don't need to worry too much about servicing costs in the later years because, well, it just keeps ticking, and you can also then replace it at a later stage if you really want. But you'll see this one is activated by a screw down crown, it's an unguarded crown, and of course this movement has hacking and hand winding. So prior to getting this watch, I would have thought about it as a novelty. I would have maybe considered it as a fun watch. I love fun watches in my collection. I have a couple of them. I think they're actually very important feeling or styles of watches to have in the collection, and that's what I would have categorized this one as prior to getting it. But actually having it in my collection, owning it and wearing it, I don't put it into that category. I just wear it as a really nice dive watch that has some elements to it that make it look better than other watches that I've owned. It's a watch that I've been gravitating towards and wearing because I enjoy wearing it. It feels nice, it looks good, and it just works nicely as a watch. I'm not avoiding this watch because of the lens. I'm not avoiding this watch because of how tall it is as a result of it. I'm just wearing this one and enjoying it. And I think I'm going to be continuing to do that for a while. Thanks for watching, guys. Got a couple more videos here that you might want to watch next.